Shout at me again and I'll end you." She didn't whisper it. She didn't apologize afterward. She said it loud enough for his mother to hear, loud enough for his underboss to drop his silverware, loud enough that the pianist stopped playing mid-note. One waitress, one mafia boss, one sentence that shattered everything. What Anthony Rossi did next, nobody, especially Emily Baker, saw it coming. Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to the channel. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from today. United States? Canada? United Kingdom? Australia? Wherever you are, I'm so grateful you're here. And if you're new to this community, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on those notifications, because we share stories that will make you feel, make you think, and remind you that courage doesn't always look the way you expect it to. What if I told you that sometimes the person who breaks you is the only one who can teach you how to be whole again? This is the story of Emily Baker and Anthony Rossi, a waitress and a mafia boss. Two people drowning in different oceans who somehow found each other in the storm. They met on Christmas Day in the most expensive restaurant in the city. She was working a triple shift to pay for her brother's medical bills. He was there with his family, 3 weeks after finding his father's murdered body. What happened between them didn't just change their lives, it saved them. So settle in, get comfortable, maybe grab some tissues, and remember, after you hear this story, come back to the comments and tell me, have you ever had to stand up to someone powerful? Have you ever reached your breaking point and discovered that's actually where your power lives? Because that's what Emily did. And what Anthony did next? Well, that's why we're all here. This story begins at 5 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, when Emily Baker's alarm went off and she had no idea this would be the last day of her old life. The alarm pierced through the darkness of Emily's cramped apartment. Her hand shot out from under the thin blanket, fumbling for her phone, desperate to silence it before it woke Jake. In the living room, she could hear the soft, mechanical hum of her brother's medical equipment, a sound that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat over the past 6 months. Christmas Day. She'd promised Jake she'd be home today, promised they'd watch movies, eat something better than microwaved meals, pretend for just a few hours that their lives weren't held together by prayer and desperation. But promises, Emily had learned, were luxuries she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed again, a text from her manager at Milano's. "Need you today. Rossi party. Triple pay. Can't say no." Emily closed her eyes, felt the familiar sting behind her eyelids. Triple pay meant 2 more physical therapy sessions for Jake. Triple pay meant survival, even if it cost her 1 more piece of herself. She pulled herself out of bed and walked quietly to the living room. Jake was asleep on the couch, his injured leg elevated on pillows, the brace catching the blue glow from the medical monitor beside him. He was 19, should have been at college parties, should have been worrying about finals and girls. Instead, he was here, recovering from the accident that had shattered his femur, his tibia, his plans, their lives. The drunk driver who hit him had walked away with a citation. Jake had walked away with $200,000 in medical bills and a maybe, just maybe, chance of walking normally again. Emily gently pulled the blanket up over his shoulders, brushed the hair from his forehead. "I'm so sorry, Jake," she whispered. "I'll make it up to you. I promise." The bus ride to Milano's took 45 minutes. Through the frosted windows, she saw families in warm houses, Christmas trees glowing in living rooms, children's faces pressed against glass waiting for snow. She saw the life she used to imagine for herself before the accident, before the bills, before she learned that some people get to rest and some people get to survive, and the two are rarely the same. By the time she arrived at Milano's, the restaurant was already buzzing with controlled chaos. The manager, Mr. DeLuca, approached her with his clipboard clutched like a shield. "Emily, thank God you're here. I know it's Christmas, but the Rossi family Christmas dinner, it's our biggest reservation of the year. I need my best people on that table." Emily tied her apron with practiced efficiency. "Which section?" "The main dining room, center table." "Emily," Mr. DeLuca lowered his voice. "Be extra careful today. The Rossi family, they're not regular customers. You understand?" Emily understood. Everyone who worked at Milano's understood. The Rossi family wasn't just wealthy, they were connected. The kind of connected that made grown men nervous and police officers look the other way. Her co-worker, Maria, grabbed her arm as she walked past. "Girl, be careful today. That family, just keep your head down, smile, don't engage." Emily nodded. She'd served them before once. The energy at that table had been different from any other. There was a weight to their presence, a silence that fell over neighboring tables. By 10 o'clock, the restaurant had transformed. Gold garlands draped over the chandeliers, strings of white lights wrapped around columns, and the Christmas tree in the corner stood 12 feet tall. The Rossi party was scheduled for noon, the table set with Milano's finest china, crystal glasses that caught the light like diamonds. While Emily prepared the dining room across the city, Anthony Rossi sat in his penthouse apartment staring at a photograph. In his hand, he held the program from his father's funeral. 3 weeks ago. 21 days since he'd walked into his father's study and found him slumped over his desk, 3 bullets in his chest, blood pooling on the mahogany surface. Giovanni Rossi had been a legend in their world, feared, respected, ruthless. He'd taught his only son that mercy was weakness, that emotion was liability, that the only way to survive was to make sure everyone else was more afraid of you than you were of anything. And then someone had killed him. Now everyone was waiting for Anthony to retaliate, to prove he was his father's son. His uncle Marco called every day with updates on suspects, on opportunities for revenge. His mother called to remind him that his father's legacy was now his responsibility. The entire family was watching to see what kind of boss he would be. Anthony looked at himself in the mirror as he dressed for the family Christmas dinner. Black suit, black shirt, his father's watch on his wrist, the family crest tattooed on his right hand where everyone could see it. He looked like his father. He sounded like his father. And God help him lately, he'd started acting like his father. The cruelty that used to make him sick now came easily. He was becoming the thing he'd spent his whole life trying not to be. And he didn't know how to stop it. His phone rang. Uncle Marco. "Anthony, we're gathering at your mother's before we head to the restaurant. We need to discuss the Catalano situation." "I'll be there," Anthony said, his voice flat, empty. "Good. Your father would be proud of how you're handling things. You're becoming the leader we need." Anthony hung up without responding. Proud. His father had never been proud of him, not once in 32 years. By the time the Rossi family arrived at Milano's, the entire staff had been briefed. Mr. DeLuca stood at the door personally, greeting Gabriella Rossi, Anthony's mother. She was elegant in black, pearls at her throat, her face beautiful and cold as marble. Behind her came Uncle Marco, thick-necked and dangerous. Then cousins, associates, soldiers, and then Anthony. He stepped through the door and the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair and strong jaw, but his eyes held something different. Grief, maybe, or rage so deep it looked like sorrow. Emily was arranging bread baskets when she saw them enter. She recognized Anthony immediately. He'd been at that table last year, had barely looked at her. But something was different now. He carried himself like a man who'd forgotten how to feel anything except the weight of expectation. The Rossi party settled at their table, 10 people arranged around white linen and gold-rimmed plates. Emily approached with water, with menus, with the bright, careful smile she'd perfected over 6 years. "Good afternoon," she said. "Welcome to Milano's. Can I start you with something to drink?" Gabriella Rossi ordered Prosecco. Marco ordered whiskey. Anthony said nothing, didn't even look up from his menu. Emily took the orders, disappeared to the bar, returned with a tray perfectly balanced. When she reached Anthony, she set his water glass down gently. Still, he didn't acknowledge her presence. The first course came and went smoothly. Emily was juggling 6 other tables, her feet already aching. Her mind calculating how many hours until she could go home. She was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, but she smiled and nodded and brought what was asked for and existed in that space service workers occupy, seen but not noticed. Then came the wine incident. Emily brought a bottle of Barolo to the table, one of the most expensive on Milano's list. She poured a taste for Anthony first. He picked up the glass, swirled it once, took a sip, and then his face changed. He slammed the glass down so hard the silverware jumped. "It's warm," he said, his voice cutting through the Christmas music. "Did I ask for tea?" Emily felt her stomach drop. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me get you—" "I said cold," Anthony interrupted, his voice getting louder. "How difficult is that? Is everyone here deaf or just incompetent?" Mr. DeLuca appeared, hands raised in apology. "Mr. Rossi, I sincerely apologize. We'll bring a new bottle immediately." "I don't want apologies," Anthony snapped. "I want what I asked for. Is that too much to expect?" Emily stood frozen, watching this unfold. She'd been yelled at before, belittled, blamed for things beyond her control. She'd learned to absorb it, to let it roll off. But today, after waking at 5, after lying to Jake, after 6 years of swallowing her pride, something felt different. Something felt like it was cracking inside her chest. She went to get a new bottle, her hands shaking as she pulled it from the wine fridge. When she returned, she poured carefully, making sure the temperature was exactly right. Anthony picked up his glass, tasted it, said nothing. No acknowledgement, no apology for overreacting, just silence, as if she didn't exist. Emily tried to move on, to serve the other tables, to do her job. But she could feel something building in her chest, a pressure that had been accumulating for 6 years, for 6 months, for every time she'd had to smile through disrespect. The main course service began. Osso buco, risotto, roasted vegetables, plate after plate of expensive food. Emily was carrying a heavy tray when Anthony snapped his fingers at her, actually snapped his fingers like she was a dog. "You," he said, not even using her name. "Stop standing there like decoration. Move." The words hit her like a physical blow. Stop standing there like decoration, as if she wasn't human, as if her exhaustion, her fear, her desperation to provide for her brother, all of it was invisible. Uncle Marco laughed. "Can't find good help anymore, nephew." "Your father used to say the same thing." And something in Emily snapped. Maybe it was the comparison to his father. Maybe it was the laughter. Maybe it was 6 years of being treated as less than human finally catching up with her. Maybe it was Christmas Day and Jake home alone and the fact that she was giving everything and it still wasn't enough. She set down the bread basket she was holding. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, calm, as if her body had made a decision her brain was still processing. She stepped forward, closer to the table, close enough that everyone could see her clearly. The room seemed to sense what was coming. Conversations quieted. The Christmas tree lights blinked in the background, cheerful and oblivious. Emily looked directly at Anthony Rossi. Her blue eyes met his dark ones. And for the first time all day, he actually saw her. She raised her hand, pointed her finger at him, and spoke clearly, firmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Shout at me again," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a bell, "and I'll end you." The world stopped spinning. Forks froze mid-air. Wine glasses hovered at lips. Someone at a nearby table gasped. Uncle Marco started to rise, his face darkening, but Anthony held up a hand. He was staring at Emily, his expression unreadable, something shifting behind his eyes. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Marco demanded. Emily didn't look away from Anthony. "I know exactly who I'm talking to. Someone who thinks money means he can treat people like trash. Someone who's so used to people being afraid of him that he's forgotten how to see them as human." The silence stretched, electric and dangerous. Mr. DeLuca was frozen by the kitchen door, his face pale. Every person in Milano's was witnessing this moment, this collision of worlds. Anthony stood slowly. The chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet. He was tall, imposing, everything about him radiating power. Emily didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't apologize. She stood her ground, trembling but upright, terrified but certain. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then Anthony spoke, his voice quiet, almost confused. "Everyone, leave. Now." The Rossi family looked at each other uncertain. They'd never seen Anthony like this. "Anthony," his mother began. "I said leave," he repeated, louder this time. The family rose slowly, gathering coats and purses. They filed out in silence, Marco shooting Emily a look that promised consequences. When they were gone, the restaurant was so quiet Emily could hear her own heartbeat. Anthony looked at her one more time. His jaw flexed once. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. Emily stood there, the entire restaurant staring at her, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading, her mind catching up with what she'd just done. Mr. DeLuca approached slowly. "Emily, I think you should go home." She nodded numbly, untied her apron, folded it, set it on the bar. Walked through the kitchen, past the staring faces, past Maria, who whispered, "Oh my God, girl, what did you just do?" Emily didn't know. She stepped out into the cold December air and started walking toward the bus stop. Her breath came out in white clouds. Her whole body felt strange, like she'd just survived something that should have killed her. She'd stood up to a mafia boss, in front of his entire family, on Christmas Day. She'd probably just ended her career, possibly worse. People like the Rossis didn't forget disrespect. But underneath the fear, underneath the worry, there was something else. Pride. For once, just once, she hadn't swallowed it. She hadn't apologized for existing. She'd stood up for herself. When she got home, Jake was awake, sitting up with a microwaved burrito and a Christmas movie playing. He looked up, his face brightening before he registered her expression. "Em? What happened? You're home early." She sank down beside him. For a moment, she just sat there. Then it all came tumbling out. The Rossi family, Anthony's cruelty. The moment she'd finally snapped, the look on his face when she'd threatened him, the possibility that she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Jake listened, his eyes getting wider. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something Emily didn't expect. "Em, I'm so proud of you." She looked at him, startled. "Proud? Jake, I probably just lost my job. Possibly worse." "I know," Jake said seriously. "But Em, you've been taking care of me for 6 months. Before that, you took care of Mom when she was sick. You've been taking care of everyone your whole life, and you never complain. Someone needed to tell that guy he couldn't treat you like that. I'm glad it was you." Emily felt tears burning in her eyes. "What if they come after me?" "Then we figure it out," Jake interrupted. "Together. You've been carrying me for 6 months. Let me help carry this." They sat together, the Christmas movie playing, neither of them really watching. Emily tried to sleep that night, but her mind kept replaying the scene. Anthony's face when she'd confronted him. The shock, yes, but also something else, something that looked almost like recognition. Across the city, Anthony Rossi was having the same problem. He sat in his penthouse, a glass of wine in his hand that he wasn't drinking. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The waitress, Emily Baker, according to the name tag he'd been too self-absorbed to notice. the way she'd stood up to him, the way her hand had shaken even as her voice stayed steady, the way she'd looked at him not with fear, but with disappointment. He replayed his own behavior, saw it from outside himself, and felt sick. The snapping fingers, the raised voice, the cruelty over something as stupid as wine temperature. He'd sounded exactly like his father, acted exactly like his father, and when she'd called him on it, something had cracked open in his chest. She was terrified. He'd seen that, but she'd done it anyway. When was the last time anyone had been that honest with him? When was the last time someone had looked at him and seen past the name, the reputation, and called him on his bullshit? He pulled out his laptop, started searching. Emily Baker, 28 years old, no criminal record, but there were other records, medical billing, insurance claims. Her brother, Jake Baker, 19, car accident 6 months ago. Multiple surgeries, ongoing physical therapy, medical debt that would crush most people. He pulled up her work history at Milano's. 6 years. Never missed a shift except in the last 6 months. Excellent performance reviews, reliable, hardworking, invisible, in the way service workers are trained to be invisible. Anthony leaned back, pressed his palms against his eyes. She wasn't angry about the wine, he said aloud. She was drowning, and I held her head under. A memory surfaced. His mother, years ago, before his father's cruelty, had turned her cold. She'd been standing up for herself. His father had responded with public humiliation, with punishment until she learned to never challenge him again. Anthony had watched his mother transform from a woman with fire in her eyes to a beautiful, empty shell. And today, he'd tried to do the same thing to that waitress. When did I become him? When had he stopped fighting against his father's legacy and started embodying it? The answer came like a punch the day his father died. He'd put on his father's armor because he didn't know how else to survive. But that waitress, Emily, she'd looked at him and seen through it. She'd seen the man underneath doing a very bad impression of a monster, and she'd called him out. He thought about her trembling hands and steady voice. Thought about her working on Christmas Day. Thought about the weight she must be carrying. She had every reason to stay silent, to keep her head down, to protect her paycheck. And instead, she'd looked at him and chosen her dignity over her survival. That took more courage than anything Anthony had ever done. She'd been terrified, and she'd done it anyway. That was real strength. Anthony made a decision. He picked up his phone, dialed his personal lawyer. "Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Quietly." The next morning, Emily woke up expecting the worst. She checked her phone, saw messages from Mr. DeLuca asking her to take a few days off. That was probably code for, "You're fired." She saw messages from Maria and other co-workers, half supportive, half warning her that the Rossi family didn't forget. She was making coffee when there was a knock at her apartment door. Her heart jumped into her throat. She looked through the peephole and froze. Anthony Rossi stood in the hallway. Not with bodyguards, not with his uncle. Just him, wearing jeans and a sweater, looking almost human. He held 2 cups of coffee, an olive branch, or a bribe. Emily's first instinct was to not open the door. But curiosity, or maybe something else, made her unlock the deadbolt. She opened the door halfway, kept the chain on. "What do you want?" "To apologize," Anthony said simply. He held up the coffee cups. "And I brought peace offerings. Though I got your order from the barista downstairs, and I'm not sure I trust his judgment, so if it's wrong, I'll go back." Emily stared at him. Without the armor of the restaurant, the expensive suit, he looked different, tired, younger, almost uncertain. "You came to my apartment to apologize?" "I came because you were right," Anthony said, "and because you deserve to hear that I know you were right." "How did you even find my address?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I have resources. I'm not proud of using them, but I did." Emily considered slamming the door. but something in his face stopped her. He looked like he'd been awake all night. He looked like someone who'd seen himself clearly for the first time and didn't like what he'd found. "You're 3 weeks too late for apologies," she said. "I know, but I'm asking you to let me try anyway." Behind her, she heard Jake moving around. She didn't want to let Anthony Rossi into her life, but she also remembered the look on his face yesterday, right before he'd walked out. Something broken and ashamed. "One conversation," she said finally. 5 minutes, then you leave me alone." "Thank you." Emily closed the door, unhooked the chain, opened it again. "Coffee shop down the street, not here." They walked in silence to the small cafe on the corner. It was early enough that the place was nearly empty. They sat at a table by the window, Emily choosing the seat closest to the exit, her coat still on. "Say what you came to say," she told him. Anthony wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, stared into it. "My father died 3 weeks before Christmas. I found his body. He was murdered, execution style. I've been expected to retaliate, to prove I'm him, to take his place." He looked up, met her eyes. "Instead, I took everything I couldn't process and dumped it on you. And I'm sorry." Emily hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected real vulnerability, real explanation. "I'm sorry about your father." "Don't be. He was a monster. And I spent Christmas Day proving I'm his son." Anthony's jaw tightened. "You were the first person brave enough to tell me the truth. That I was acting like him." They sat in silence for a moment. "So what? You had one moment of self-awareness and now you're here for forgiveness?" "No," Anthony said. "I'm here because you had every reason to stay silent and you didn't. Because you were terrified and you spoke up anyway. I need to know why. Why risk it?" Emily looked at him for a long time. "Because I have a brother. He's 19. Car accident 6 months ago. Drunk driver walked away without a scratch. Jake got metal rods in his legs and medical bills that will probably take the rest of my life to pay off." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I work every holiday, every double shift, because those bills don't stop. I'm happy to do it if it means he gets better. But yesterday, you treated me like I was invisible, like I was nothing. And I realized that if I kept swallowing that, I'd disappear completely. So I chose myself, for once." Anthony was quiet for a long moment. "I looked into your records last night. I'm sorry, that's invasive and wrong, but I needed to understand. I saw Jake's medical bills. I saw your work history. I saw how much you're carrying. And I realized you weren't angry about wine. You were drowning and I tried to hold your head under." "So now what?" Emily asked. "What if I told you I'm trying to change? That you showed me a different way?" Emily shook her head. "I'm not your redemption arc. I'm not here to save you from yourself." "I'm not asking you to," Anthony said quietly. "I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be better." They sat there, two people from completely different worlds, connected by one moment of brutal honesty. Emily didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, but something in his eyes, some genuine shame and desire to change, made her hesitate. "One conversation," she said. "That's all you get." Anthony nodded. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." But it wasn't done. Because the next morning, Anthony showed up again, and the morning after that. No pressure, no expectations, just showing up, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just sitting on the steps of her building. On day 5, she finally opened the door. "Why are you doing this?" Anthony stood. "Because I was wrong, and because you deserve to see that someone can hear you and change." Something about his persistence wore her down. Or maybe it was the way he never asked for anything, just kept showing up. "One coffee," she said. "Real conversation. Deal." They went to the same cafe. This time, Emily took her coat off, settled in. Anthony sat across from her. "Tell me about your father," Emily said. Anthony looked surprised. "Why?" "Because you're trying to understand me by investigating my life. So I want to understand you." So Anthony talked about growing up in the shadow of a legend, about being taught that strength meant brutality, that kindness was weakness, about watching his father rule through fear, about wanting desperately to be different and not knowing how. "He was murdered 3 weeks ago," Anthony said, "and part of me was relieved. How messed up is that?" "Not messed up," Emily said softly. "Human." They talked for 2 hours that day, about families, about obligation, about the weight of expectation, and when they left, something had shifted. They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't strangers anymore either. The coffee meetings became regular, twice a week, then 3 times. Anthony would call to ask how Jake's therapy was going. Emily found herself answering honestly. They started sharing pieces of themselves, slowly, carefully, like people learning to trust. Anthony made her laugh one day, telling a story about his cousin's failed attempt at intimidation. Emily laughed despite herself. "Don't make me like you," she said. "Too late," he replied, grinning. That's when Emily got the call that changed everything. She was at home when her phone rang. Hospital billing. "Ms. Baker, I'm calling about your brother's account." "I'm working on a payment plan," Emily said quickly. "I just need—" "No, Ms. Baker, you don't understand. The account has been paid." Emily went still. "What?" "The entire balance, $247,000, paid in full by an anonymous donor." The phone slipped from Emily's hand. Jake looked up, concerned. She picked it up with shaking hands. "There must be a mistake." "No mistake, ma'am. Your balance is zero." Emily ended the call. She knew. Instantly, she knew. She called Anthony, barely waiting for him to answer. "What did you do?" Silence. Then, quietly, "What needed to be done?" "You had no right," Emily said, her voice shaking. "I didn't ask you to save me." "It wasn't charity," Anthony interrupted. "You gave me something more valuable than money. You gave me honesty. This is just balance." Emily sat down, unable to stand. "I don't know how to accept this." "Then don't," Anthony said gently. "Just let your brother heal. That's enough." She hung up without saying goodbye. Jake moved closer. "Em, what happened?" she told him. About Anthony's investigation, about the payment. Jake was quiet for a long time. "Do you trust him?" he finally asked. "I don't know," Emily said honestly. But despite her confusion, something in her chest loosened. For the first time in 6 months, she could breathe. Jake would get the therapy he needed. The future suddenly opened up again. That night she called Anthony back. "I'm still angry with you. I know. But thank you. I don't know how to say that properly, but Jake gets to heal now." "You can be angry and grateful at the same time," Anthony said. They talked late into the night about complicated emotions, about accepting help. And somewhere in that conversation, the dynamic between them shifted, became something deeper, more real, more terrifying. But while Emily and Anthony were building trust, the Rossi family was noticing. Uncle Marco saw the change in Anthony immediately. The missed meetings, the distraction, the softness. Marco cornered Anthony in his office one afternoon. "Where's your head, nephew?" "On business," Anthony said, "or on a blonde waitress." Anthony's fingers stilled. He looked up, met his uncle's eyes, said nothing. Marco shook his head. "This is dangerous, Anthony. We're in the middle of a war. Your father just died. You can't afford weaknesses." "She's not a weakness," Anthony said quietly. "Then what is she?" "None of your business." Marco leaned forward. "Everything you do is my business. This girl is making you soft. Soft men don't survive in our world. Maybe I don't want to survive in this world, Anthony said. Marco's expression darkened. What did you say? Anthony stood. You heard me? Maybe I'm tired of ruling through violence. Maybe I saw a different way. There is no different way. There's our world and there's being dead. That girl doesn't understand what she's getting into. Then maybe someone should explain it to her, Anthony said coldly. But it won't be you. Stay away from her, Marco. After Marco left, Anthony felt the walls closing in. He called Emily. I need to see you, he said. What's wrong? Everything. They met at the cafe. Anthony looked haggard. He told her about Marco's warning, about the family's growing concern. Maybe your uncle is right, Emily said quietly. Maybe this is too dangerous. Is that what you want? Anthony asked. To walk away? Emily looked at him, saw the exhaustion, the fear, the desperate hope. No, she admitted, but I don't know if what I want matters when the stakes are this high. It matters to me. But things escalated fast. Strange things started happening. Emily noticed a man in a dark coat at Milano's, watching her for hours. When she left that night, there was a note in her locker. Beautiful family you have. Would be a shame if something happened. Emily's hands shook. She called Anthony immediately. I'm coming to get you, he said. Stay where there are people. He arrived in 12 minutes. Emily had never seen him move that fast, never seen that look on his face, rage and fear warring. Show me the note. She handed it to him. He read it, his jaw tightening. Then he pulled out his phone. Marco, call off whoever you sent to threaten her, now. A pause. I don't care. Call them off or I will, and you won't like my methods. Another pause. I'm not bluffing. He hung up, turned to Emily. I'm assigning security to you. Anthony, please, he said, and the desperation in his voice stopped her. Please let me protect you. Emily wanted to refuse, but the note in her hand, the threat to Jake, it all crashed down at once. Okay, she whispered. From that moment, things escalated. A security guard appeared outside her building. Strange cars followed her. Her co-workers noticed, started asking questions. Mr. DeLuca pulled her aside. Emily, the Rossi family has been asking about you. Maybe you should take some time off. She was being pushed out because she dared to care about the wrong person. That's when Anthony's mother got involved. Gabriella Rossi showed up at Milano's, requested Emily's section specifically. Sit down, dear, Gabriella said. It wasn't a request. I'm working, Mrs. Rossi. I've paid for your entire section. Sit. Emily sat, her heart pounding. Gabriella was elegant and cold, designer black, pearls. My son is infatuated with you, Gabriella said without preamble. Mrs. Rossi, you seem like a smart girl, smart enough to know this ends badly, for both of you, but especially for you. I'm not using him. I believe you. That's what makes this worse. Gabriella took a sip of wine. If you were a gold digger, we could buy you off, but you actually care. That makes you dangerous. Dangerous how? Because he's willing to lose everything for you. In our world, love is a liability, and Anthony is choosing you over all of it. Gabriella leaned forward. Do you know what happens to men in his position who make emotional decisions? They get buried next to their fathers. Emily felt cold. What do you want me to do? Walk away. Let him remember you as the brave girl who stood up to him. Don't become the reason he's dead before 40. Does he know you're here? Of course not. He'd never forgive me. But I'm his mother. His survival matters more than his forgiveness. Gabriella stood, left $200 on the table, walked out. Emily sat there, understanding for the first time exactly how dangerous caring for Anthony Rossi really was. Not just for her, for him. That night, she tried to break things off. She met Anthony at their cafe, her mind made up. "We can't do this anymore," she said. Anthony's face went still. "What happened?" "Your mother came to see me. She explained what's at stake, and I can't be the reason you get hurt." "That's not your choice to make." "Yes, it is," Emily said firmly. "I have Jake to think about. I can't risk him just because I've started to care about you more than I should." Anthony reached across the table, took her hands. "They threatened you, showed up at your work. That's how they operate, through fear." "Then maybe fear is the smart response." "Or maybe," Anthony said, his grip tightening, "maybe this is when we stop letting them control us. I'm done. With them, with the family, with all of it. I'm walking away, Emily." "Anthony, you can't just leave. Watch me!" His voice was steel. "I have insurance, evidence, documents. They know it. They can't touch either of us without consequences." "That's not insurance," Emily said desperately. "That's a death warrant." "I'm telling them I choose you," Anthony interrupted. "I choose a life where I don't have to hurt people to survive. I choose becoming someone my father would have hated." Emily stared at him, saw the determination, the fear underneath, the desperate hope. "They'll kill you. They'll try. But this is the first time I'm preparing for the best case, a life with you, where I get to be normal. I'm terrified. So am I. But I'm more terrified of living my whole life the way my father did. Alone, feared, never loved. You changed that." They sat there, two people from different worlds, connected by defiance and trust. Emily knew the smart thing was to walk away, but when she looked at Anthony, she saw a man trying desperately to break a cycle. "Okay," she whispered. "But carefully. And the first sign things go wrong, we get out. Deal." But things went wrong faster than anticipated. The next night, Emily was leaving Milano's after her shift. It was late, the streets mostly empty. She was walking to the bus stop when she heard the engine, looked up to see a car accelerating toward her, no headlights, too fast. She froze. Then someone grabbed her from behind, tackled her onto the sidewalk, the car missing her by inches before speeding off. Emily lay on the cold concrete, gasping. The man who'd saved her was one of Anthony's security guards. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" "I don't think so." Within minutes, Anthony's car pulled up. He got out before it fully stopped, ran to her, dropped to his knees. "Emily, are you okay? Talk to me." "I'm fine. Your guard saved me." Anthony looked at the guard. "You get their plate?" "No plates, boss. Windows tinted. Professional." Anthony's face went cold in a way Emily had never seen, but underneath she could see terror, the absolute terror of almost losing her. "This isn't okay," he said quietly. "I'm ending this tonight." "Anthony, I'm making a choice, and they're going to have to live with it." That night, Anthony drove to the Rossi family estate. The compound was lit up, a meeting in progress, Uncle Marco having called everyone together. Anthony walked in without his security detail, carrying only a leather folder. His mother saw him first, knew immediately something had changed. "Antonio," she said, using his full name, a warning. "Mother," he acknowledged, then turned to the table full of uncles, cousins, soldiers. "We need to talk." Uncle Marco leaned back. "Finally decided to join us? We have decisions to make." "I have decisions to make too," Anthony said, setting the folder on the table but not opening it. The room's attention focused on him. "For 3 months," Anthony said, his voice steady, "I've been trying to figure out who I am versus who you need me to be, and I realized I can't do both." "Anthony," Marco warned, "think carefully. I've thought about nothing else." Anthony opened the folder, spread documents across the table. Bank accounts, transaction records, recorded conversations, 20 years of federal crimes laid out like cards. Everyone in this room is represented here. Names, dates, amounts. Gasps rippled around the table. His cousin Dante half stood. His mother's face went pale. "Anthony, what have you done?" Gabriella whispered. "Insurance, Mother. If anything happens to me or to Emily, this goes to the FBI." Marco reached for his gun. 3 other men followed. Anthony didn't flinch. "Do it. But know that my lawyer has instructions. No word from me by midnight. Everything gets released." Standoff. Guns drawn. Anthony empty-handed, but calm. "I don't want to destroy you. I want to leave. Let me go. Let her go. And this stays buried." "You think you can just walk away?" Marco demanded. "I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you the terms." "And if we refuse?" Gabriella asked tearfully. Anthony looked at his mother. "Then you'll visit me in witness protection if you visit at all." Endless seconds of tension. Finally, Marco lowered his weapon. "You're dead to us." "I can live with that." Anthony walked toward the door, every step expecting a bullet. Reaching the exit, he turned back. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this." "Antonio," Gabriella said, his full name, the name from childhood. Anthony stopped. "Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you." Anthony's voice broke. "I know, Mama." He walked out into the night. An hour later, he sat in his car outside Emily's apartment before going up. Emily opened the door in pajamas, took one look at his face. "You did it." "I did it." He collapsed into her arms, the weight of 32 years of pressure hitting him. Emily held him while he shook. "I have nothing now," he said. "Just what's legally mine." Emily pulled back, looked him in the eyes. "You have yourself, for the first time." "Is it enough?" "It's everything." The following months were a blur of transformation. Anthony sold the estate, moved to a normal apartment. First-time grocery shopping. "Why are there 17 kinds of bread?" Emily laughed, teaching him normal life. Anthony started a legitimate business. Real estate development, clean money. Therapy sessions were Emily's idea, Anthony's commitment. Learning to apologize without making excuses. Learning to receive love without assuming it was transactional. Jake's recovery progressed. Physical therapy paying off. Walking unassisted. First day of community college. Jake to Anthony. "Thank you. I know Em doesn't say it enough, but thank you." Anthony. "She saved me first. This is just balance." Jake. "No. This is family." Emily quit Milano's, finished her online degree. Got a job as a hospital patient advocate, helping people navigate medical billing. No one should drown the way we did. Finding purpose beyond survival. Anthony watching her bloom. "You're different." Emily. "I'm the same, just louder now." 3 months ago, an anonymous note. "Some debts can't be paid in court." Anthony tightened security again, but resolution came through Marco's arrest on unrelated charges. The family dissolving without central leadership. Gabriella calling Anthony, "It's over, come home." Anthony, "I am home, Mama." Christmas Eve 1 year later. Milano's restaurant completely reserved. Anthony paid for the entire evening. Emily arrived in a red dress instead of blue uniform. Decorations identical to last year, but atmosphere transformed. Single table for 2, soft candlelight, Christmas tree glowing. Same pianist, playing different music. Anthony in dark blue shirt, nervous. Emily noticing, "You're shaking." Anthony, "I've faced down armed men. This is scarier." Dinner was simple. Pasta, wine, bread, the things they couldn't enjoy a year ago. Conversation flowing easily. Jake's progress, Anthony's business, their shared apartment. As dessert arrived, Anthony reached across the table. "Last Christmas, you said 5 words to me that changed everything." Emily, "I remember." Anthony, "You warned me you'd end me, and you did." You ended the man I was pretending to be. You ended the cycle my father started. Standing, moving around the table, kneeling beside her chair, restaurant staff pausing to watch. Some remembered last year. This Christmas, I want to ask 5 words of my own. Pulling out a simple ring. Sapphire, not diamond. Her birthstone. Will you marry me, Emily? Emily, tears streaming. You promised 5 words. That's 6. Anthony laughing through his own tears. Will you marry me? Emily. Yes, yes, yes. Sliding the ring on, both trembling. The kiss, soft, certain, witnessed by the same room that saw their breaking, staff applauding, manager approaching with champagne. On the house, and, Ms. Baker, I'm sorry. For everything. Emily, gracious. Water under the bridge. Walking out of Milano's hand in hand, snow falling softly. Anthony, what do we do now? Emily, we live, loudly, without apologizing. Anthony, I like that plan. Emily. And Anthony. Anthony. Yes? Emily. Merry Christmas. Anthony kissing her hand. Merry Christmas, my brave Emily. Sometimes the person who breaks you becomes the person who shows you how to rebuild. Sometimes a moment of courage costs everything and gives back more. Emily and Anthony aren't perfect, but they're real, they're healing. And they chose each other despite the cost. Now, before we close out this story, I need to ask you something important. If you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, if you believe that people who abuse their power should be called out, hit that subscribe button right now. Only people like Uncle Marco, only bullies and manipulators who think money gives them the right to treat others like trash, would skip subscribing to a channel that shares stories about standing up for what's right. And comment below, everyone deserves respect, if you're not siding with the Anthony Rossi who walked into that restaurant on Christmas Day. Comment if you believe that kindness matters more than power, that change is possible, that courage sometimes looks like a waitress pointing her finger and saying, enough. If you've ever had to stand up to someone powerful, tell us your story in the comments. If you've ever had to choose between safety and living, we see you. If you've ever believed someone was beyond redemption and been proven wrong, share that too. And remember, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just says, shout at me again and I'll end you. And sometimes, miraculously, that changes everything. Sometimes the loudest changes come from the quietest moments. Sometimes the smallest act of defiance becomes someone else's salvation. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart and remind you that strength can come from anyone, even a waitress on Christmas. Until next time, beautiful souls, keep standing up, keep speaking out, keep choosing yourself, because you never know who's watching, who's listening, who needs to hear that it's okay to say no more.